It was their terrifying task to chase the enemy down into their booby-trapped retreat.
And you get down in a tunnel and they start closing in on you, or you hear noises and you start shooting, and you can get cranked up real easy and lose it completely, and probably make you go insane if you're not careful.
When the U.S. and Allied troops first arrived in Vietnam in the early 1960s, they had no idea that the enemy were under their very feet. On the surface, the tunnel entrances were carefully camouflaged. VC guerrillas appeared and disappeared down them at will. The small town of Cu Chi, just 50 miles north of Saigon, was at the heart of the Viet Cong's secret network. By 1965, the system snaked nearly 200 miles under villages, huts, and fields. It weaved from the Ho Chi Minh Trail in the north to the gates of Saigon in the south. From the hidden underground bunkers and spider holes, the Viet Cong guerrillas sprung devastating ambushes and stealthy night attacks that inflicted horrific casualties on American forces.
You'd be walking through an area, and you really think there's going to be a bunker over here in this hedgerow, and there may be a sniper up in this tree and that kind of thing. But most of the danger came from walking through an area that was infested with these tunnels and what we call spider holes, just small, maybe this big around holes that these guys could pop up out of, take a shot, hit a guy in the back, pop back down.
The Viet Cong became brilliantly adept at making savage booby traps. Some devices were brutally simple. When a trooper stepped onto one of these man traps, the wooden spikes impaled and incapacitated him. The guerrillas became especially skilled at turning unexploded American ordnance into devastating booby traps. In October 1965, 68 Australian engineers, or sappers, from 3 Field Troop arrived in Vietnam primarily to help locate and disarm the booby traps. However, they soon made a critical discovery that changed the course of the war. 25-year-old Captain Alex Sandy McGregor led the way.
We came across this tunnel within a village, which was an enemy village. What happened was that I went down the tunnel, and I can remember my sergeant, my staff sergeant actually, holding my legs with a rope, because I went down head first.
This first tunnel turned out to be a relatively short escape tunnel from a village hut. It would, however, be dwarfed by an incredible discovery on their next mission. On January 7th, 1966, American and Allied forces, under the direction of General William Westmoreland, launched a massive attack, spearheaded by the pride of America's military, the 1st Infantry Division. The strike was aimed at the heart of the Viet Cong war machine in South Vietnam. They moved into the Ho Bo Woods, just east of the Iron Triangle. Helicopters, tanks, armored personnel carriers, and more than 8,000 men joined the battle. In one huge blow, America's leaders planned to find and destroy the Viet Cong Politico headquarters and effectively end the war. The Australian engineers of 3 Field Troop were assigned to support the crack 173rd Airborne Brigade. They deployed from their base at Bien Hoa, just east of Saigon. The Australians headed for the south edge of the Ho Bo Woods. If all went according to plan, the enemy would be swept down towards them. Then the Australians would cut them off. But the plan backfired. The enemy was already waiting when they landed.
As soon as we landed, I knew there was something up. There were shots coming out, there were guns going off. We were being mortared at that time.
In the midst of the chaos, an Australian infantryman spotted Viet Cong snipers firing from slits in what looked like an anthill. He crawled towards it and slung a grenade into the mound. He then called the engineers of 3 Field Troop. The Aussie sappers were ready. They had already devised a technique to deal with the tunnels. They first blew the top off to reveal an entrance, and then they used an industrial air blower called a Mighty Mite and blew smoke down the hole.
Then what we did was we blew down tear gas The smoke was to find entrances. The tear gas was to clear the tunnel of enemy as far as we could. And then our boys wearing gas masks, torch in one hand, bayonet in the other, going down the tunnel.
The tunnel was empty. They then prepared explosives to destroy it. They skillfully placed the charges to make the maximum impact. While simple tunnels and underground bunkers had been found before, the ones discovered during Operation Crimp were on a massive scale never seen before. They found whole guerrilla encampments underground, bunkers connected by tiny passageways. There were chambers that stored arms and food. They had sleeping quarters and areas to treat the wounded. The tunnel rats found hidden trap doors laced with booby traps that led to even deeper levels and more chambers. They had uncovered the Viet Cong's secret underground fortifications. When General Westmoreland was informed of the find, he ordered all tunnels be searched for men, intelligence, arms, and supplies. Then they were to be destroyed. The tunnel rats, driven by duty and courage, went to work. On day 2 of Operation Crimp, on January 8, 1966, 3 field troop returned to the Hobo Woods and parachuted into a hornet's nest. Incredibly, they landed on a VC tunnel. What they unearthed in it almost changed the course of the war.
What we landed on was the headquarters of the Cholon Jardin area. We actually even pulled out the hit list, right, that the Viet Cong had of the senior officers in Saigon, in the order that they were going to be hit.
The VC hit list whetted their curiosity. The tunnel rats had unearthed a gold mine. They descended deeper, down 3 levels, but stopped before opening a trap door.
Had they gone through that trapdoor, we would have unleashed hell, because that was the only entrance into the heavy headquarters for the Saigon area.
One trapdoor and we could have changed the whole war. Really, it's terrifying to know that there were that many people down below us. But also, I don't know what would have happened, to be quite honest with you.
They only realized how close they were to the enemy headquarters after the war was over. Their mission was to eliminate the Viet Cong, destroy their subterranean stronghold, and protect Saigon. The 25th set up 3 camps, each bordering the treacherous Iron Triangle, Boi Loi, and Hobo Woods. The main base at Cu Chi gave them quick access to these danger zones. Strategic planners, however, soon realized that they had made a fatal error. The 25th began taking fire inside the Cu Chi base camp.
Có 3 đường địa đạo.
We had 3 tunnels on the 25th Division's base camp. They were built before they arrived. When we attacked, they were taken by surprise.
Chúng tôi xây dựng trước mà.
The 25th Infantry used earth movers, called Rome plows, and explosives to destroy the tunnels under the base. It took them months, but eventually they were satisfied that they had eliminated the threat from within. Military planners were now just beginning to realize the extent of the tunnel problem. Despite the best efforts of the tunnel rats, who destroyed dozens of enemy bunkers and tunnels, the Viet Cong expanded their system. By 1967, the tunnel network reached into Saigon itself.
The apex of the complex was literally in the Saigon suburbs. You know, it's sort of been like if the Germans would have had a tunnel going into London in 1940.
On January 10th, 1967, the 25th Infantry Division launched Operation Cedar Falls. The goal was to trap and crush the Viet Cong dug in and under the Iron Triangle. Newly recruited 25th Trooper C.W. Bowman arrived in Vietnam a few days before he went into the killing zone.
When you were over there, you just had to reside to the fact that you were going to die. You know, you probably weren't going to make it, so you were going to do the best you could, fight as hard as you could.
Patrol comrade Gary Heater was never too far from his close friend Bowman.
You know, I kind of want to get attached to somebody so I can have a friend over there, and I didn't want to get too friendly to too many people in case, you know, you get hurt or lose somebody. But he's the only one I really got close to.
Incoming troops were filled with tales of the horrors faced by a small band of men, the Tunnel Rats, who dared to chase the fierce Viet Cong down into their tunnels.
Sometimes they would put right underneath the entrance, they'd put a man trap, a large punji pit. Instead of landing on solid ground, you'd land into a punji pit.
In the claustrophobic confines of the tunnel, the rats knew only one would emerge alive. Tunnel rat Gary Heater was shocked by his first underground encounter.
It turned out to be a 3-4-year-old kid. This kid was just sitting there. I guess his dad just left him there. Maybe he heard me coming. But I just looked at him, and he looked at me, and, I had a flashlight on him, and I just kept on going. It scared me. He was just a kid, but it could have been Daddy.
The one time Bowman went in a tunnel by himself, he met the real enemy. He crawled through a long, narrow passageway that opened up to a large chamber, a recovery room, with VC guerrillas lying in bunks.
They had like their weapons up against the wall and stuff, and I kind of stumbled in there. When I came up in there and shined the light, and boom, it was like Keystone Cops. They started reaching for the weapons, and I started shooting. Flash, this happens, flash, that happens. People hollering, screaming, people shooting. Your heart's pounding. I mean, it's all reaction. You really don't think, you just start shooting. If you hesitate and think about it, you're the one that's probably going to die. I shot, and get the hell out of there as fast as I could.
As 1967 closed, American military planners raised the stakes. B-52 arc light strikes increased in ferocity and breadth. U.S. planes dropped massive payloads of iron bombs and chemical defoliants that would eventually reduce the Iron Triangle and the Hobo Woods to a desolate moonscape. Into this maelstrom, a new crop of America's youth arrived to do battle. The bravest volunteered to be tunnel rats. In the dark depths, they fought for their nation, their honor, and their lives. On the ground, Rome plows were liberally used to unearth and destroy tunnels. Chemical defoliants and napalm drops eliminated the jungle canopy used as cover by the enemy.
Well, by the time all that was done, you defoliate the thing, all these holes start popping up all over the place.
The Viet Cong were ready as ever to repel interloping tunnel rats.
They would tie pit vipers, and they would hang them upside down with their tails. So if you weren't aware of them, and if you didn't look close enough, you stick your head in one of them tunnels and bang.
I saw one unfortunate young man who was new. He didn't exactly know what he was doing. He crawled up. At least he knew enough to get down, but he crawled up to a tunnel and looked over the edge, and he was shot right in the face. The guy was just sitting right there.
Tragic experience taught the rats to drop hand grenades into a tunnel entrance before they went in. As a rule, however, once the tunnel had been searched and all intelligence and arms recovered, the tunnel rats had to go back down and destroy it. First, they would plant the C4 explosives in the most effective spots, then return to the surface to coordinate the demolition with the engineers detonating the charge.
And so, we ready? And said, yeah, okay. So I'd crawl back down the tunnel toward the end of the tunnel, and I'd pull the fuses, and this would start the cord. And as I'm crawling back, I'd be pulling fuses on every satchel. Once I got to the opening, they'd haul me out, and we'd run like heck. And the ground would go up, the ground would go down. End of tunnel.
Tragically, Art Tejeda lost his partner, John Riley, and nearly died himself in a terrifying tunnel search.
Flashlight pointed down the tunnel, and there were 3 VC there looking straight at us. And they opened up. And the next thing I saw was this green, yellow, red color flash, loud bang. Got my .45 and
pointed down the tunnel and emptied out the clip. I didn't hear any more sounds or anything. I tried to get John, and he wasn't moving. And I put my hand on his chest. His heart wasn't pounding, or pumping anyway. He was dead.
As 1968 arrived, tunnel rats found more and more stockpiles of arms and munitions.